Hi, I was thinking of trying to put on a face of fear. But I don't have to talk to you about fear because you use it as an excuse a lot. And I know because I used it as an excuse a lot. There are so many things that we need to change in ourselves and that we desire to change in ourselves. And how do we stop ourselves? Oh, I really should speak up more at work because they don't realize how much of the work I'm doing and how good a job I'm doing, but I get afraid that I won't say the right thing. Fear is just a way of diverting ourselves from moving out of our comfort zone. And fear is the diversion that we use to divert ourselves from clearing out traumatic experiences. So it's very important to overcome fear by looking at some of the trauma. And let me explain comfort and discomfort. I can think of a number of ways I used to proceed in the world, and I didn't like the results. Now, if somebody said to me, like I'm saying to you, oh, you're comfortable with that, I would have been offended. No, I want to change that. No, I tend to dominate and not let other people really have their turn in a conversation. I want to change that. But the truth is that while something in me wants to change that, something in me is also comfortable with that behavior. So one of the big problems is we never change because we're comfortable. We change related to the amount of discomfort we start to feel. So there are many types of behavior that you consciously want to change, but you know how to cope with it. Even though you may resent it, you know how to cope with it. And really, if you're going to change, you're going to have to look at some of the traumatic roots. Now, a mistaken idea that all trauma is sexual abuse and physical abuse or feeling that you could die. No, you can have little traumas, little traumas, little traumas. For instance, if you've had somebody close to you that died and you didn't grieve, that can be a little or a big trauma. You will have PTSD because you didn't go through a grieving process. And there can be lots of little traumas that just build and build and build until suddenly they cascade into a much bigger problem for you. So one of the important things about knowing how to work with trauma is knowing how to work with fear so that a person realizes, you know what I say to people, oh, you're afraid. Of course you are, because you're starting to look at something that's making you uncomfortable. How about imagining, oh, hi, fear, you just showed up, of course. You used to protect me, but you know what? I need to look at this. So why don't you have some ice cream or something? Thank you for showing up. You were a little late in showing up, but I'm going to look beyond my fear. There are many, many techniques that are important for you to learn, not as protocols, because each one has to be innovatively applied because every person is unique and different. But it's a great pleasure when a client will say to me, I'm afraid. And I say, okay, let's breathe together. Now they're regulated. Fear showed up because we have to go through some discomfort, but then growth and change is always a little uncomfortable. And the client says yes, and then they go to a whole other level of awareness. Because if we're not regulated, we can't look any further. And we can't have clarity and we can't have focus. So when you're dealing with somebody who is fearful, they're starting to dysregulate and lose focus. You have to know different ways of, okay, regulating the person. Now they have to look inside, because it's not necessarily the external that's causing the fear, and begin that internal process and to contemplate, and they have to take action. And as they do that, and you go with them, you journey with them, because working with trauma is so important, so very, very important, that the person feels they're a witness and you're with them. A phrase I often use is, my voice goes with you, but with another person I'll say, and I'm traveling with you, not just my voice. You have to know what kind of phrase to use that will give that individual client a sense of it's safe enough to go into the discomfort. Now, you don't want them getting too close to the trauma situation, because they'll be sucked into it in totality. They'll re-experience it and the trauma will get stronger. We don't want catharsis. We don't want the trauma to get stronger. Slow always works, and we want them, and you might say, well, I've had a client say to me, oh, but it's really scary. Okay. So approach it as close as you can approach it. Say yes. Now, fly over it and look down. Go around it at a distance that's a little uncomfortable, but not so uncomfortable. Now go underneath it and look up. Now, see if you can go a little closer. Now fly over it. This is just one of a number of techniques that's important for you to know and to be able to modify, because your client needs clarity, they need focus, they need to tolerate the discomfort, because if they can't tolerate the discomfort, they go right back to the old behavior, and they need, and you're teaching them too, each and every time, how to build resilience so that they can look at more and more trauma on a deeper and deeper level. So we don't do away with fear. By the way, if you feel that there's any kind of therapy or spiritual practice that's going to do away with fear, good luck. No, fear is a natural, biological component and response, but how we experience fear and how we deal with fear, and always when you go through step by step, paso a paso, through the fear always slowly diminishes, and you become more insightful about those aspects of yourself that are in the process of healing and help you move forward in your life. So trauma and fear are intimately connected, but you can use fear to open the door in a safe way, if you know how to work with trauma, to begin to work with trauma at the level that's appropriate. You've heard me say, slow always works. It's not about drama. It's not about you or the client saying, wow, that's terrific, you screamed and you yelled. It's about the client taking the next step forward in their life, not going down the same negative self-critical neural pathways, not being disillusioned. One of the really sad things about people who do not know how to work with trauma is that the client works very hard and you work very hard, and they don't really get to the root of the trauma, but get re-traumatized. They get further and further into disillusionment. And that eventually ends up with suicidal thinking. So this is serious business. You need to know